Welcome to Asian Horror Stories, where the shadows whisper and the unknown lurks just beyond your sight. From ancient curses to forgotten legends, every tale unravels the dark secrets hidden in the heart of Asia. Are you ready to step into the nightmare? The story we are going to tell today is China's Most Haunted Village, China's most mysterious paranormal case. Hidden deep in the remote mountains of China lies an abandoned village, a place whispered about in hushed tones, a place where the dead refuse to rest. They call it Fengmen Village. In 1963, three young men ventured into this forsaken place, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. They came for art. They left with nightmares. Some say it was all in their minds. Others believe they were lucky to make it out alive. This is their story. In 1963, three students from Zhengzhou Art Academy, Mr. J, Mr. Y, and Mr. B, set off on a trip to Fengmen Village, an isolated and mysterious settlement hidden deep in the mountains. Their goal was simple: to sketch the village's ancient architecture. But fate had other plans. As they walked into the village, an unnerving stillness settled over them. Then they noticed something. Paper money was scattered along the path. Incense sticks, half-burnt, stood eerily at the village entrance. These were traditional funeral offerings. Someone had died here recently. "What a coincidence," one of them muttered. "We just happened to arrive right after a funeral." But they had no idea who had died, or how. Then Mr. J noticed something lying in the middle of the road. A pillow. Curious, he kicked it aside. A mistake. A terrible mistake. What he didn't know was that in Chinese funeral customs, the pillow of the deceased is placed on the road to guide their spirit to the afterlife. Disturbing, it was an unforgivable taboo. And now they had sealed their fate. The young men met with the village chief, explaining their visit. "You are free to explore," the chief said, "but there is no guest house here. We don't get visitors. Is there anywhere we can stay for a few nights?" they asked. The chief hesitated. Then, after a long pause, he said, "There is one house, but I don't know if you dare to stay there." The students leaned in. "Why? What's wrong with it?" The chief let out a sigh. "Because it belongs to the family that just died." A heavy silence filled the air. The students exchanged nervous glances. Spending the night in the very house where three people had died? It was disturbing, sure. But they were modern men, educated men. They didn't believe in ghosts. And besides, they had nowhere else to stay. So, suppressing their unease, they agreed. That night, they stepped inside the house of the dead, and the horror began. The moment they crossed the threshold, a bone-chilling cold seeped into their skin. A strange, lingering odor filled the air, something between incense, decay, and damp wood. "It's just in our heads," Mr. J reassured them. Still, for safety, they decided to sleep in the same room. As long as they were together, they'd be fine. Or so they thought. At exactly 1:20 a.m., Mr. Y stirred from his sleep. Then he heard it. A voice. A child's voice.
"Mama, Mama, Mama."
The sound was soft, almost melodic, but unnaturally clear. His heart began to race. No children lived in this house. No children were left in the village at all. His hands trembled as he checked his watch. 1:20 a.m. His breath caught in his throat. No child should be calling for their mother at this hour. His skin prickled with cold sweat. Had the dead child returned home? Terror gripped his chest. He shook Mr. J and Mr. B awake. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "Hear what?" They mumbled sleepily. A child calling for their mother. They listened. Nothing. Just silence. Mr. J sighed. "You're just imagining things. It's your nerves." Mr. Y wasn't convinced. But maybe, just maybe he had imagined it. So he lay back down and tried to sleep. But the night was far from over. Sometime later, Mr. Y woke again. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy, pressing down on his chest. Then, he felt movement on the bed. Slow, deliberate, crawling toward him. His breath. It was too slow to be. It was too quiet to be. Something was there. Something was getting closer. He opened his eyes and froze. A pale, ghostly face. Its skin was corpse white, lips blackened, eyes dripping with dark tears, and straight at him, a deathly silence filled. Then it smiled. Mr. Y screamed. He thrashed, fell off the bed. "What's wrong?" Mr. Y gasped. But nothing was there. Was it just a nightmare? They might have believed that. Until the next night, when Mr. J and Mr. B had the exact same dream. The same face, the same terrifying smile. It wasn't just in their heads. Something was watching them. On the third night, Mr. Y woke up once more. This time he heard something outside. Water splashing. He crept to the window, and his blood turned to ice. A woman stood naked by the old village well. Her long, wet hair clung to her pale skin. She was washing herself, pouring water over her shoulders. Then, as if sensing his gaze, she turned and smiled. Her lips stretched too wide. Her eyes gleamed like glass. Then she plunged into the well. Mr. Y screamed. His friends ran outside, only to find the water still, silent, undisturbed. And on the ground, not a single wet footprint. By morning, Mr. Y had fallen ill, feverish, weak, and whispering about the woman in the well. The village elder was summoned. He listened to their story. Then solemnly he said, "You disturbed the dead. The pillow in the road was meant for the spirits." To break the curse, they performed a ritual, offering sacrifices to the family's grave. And the next day, the nightmares stopped. Since then, Fengmen Village has remained abandoned, a place where the dead still roam. Would you dare spend a night there?
Mama, Mama, Mama.
This is the story we tell. China's most haunted village. China's most mysterious paranormal case.